Good morning. Good morning. If you just joined us, hope you had a great Father's Day weekend and a great job in getting the week started here with me and the rest of the group in the Morning Ascent Zoomcast. So that last piece that Russ played there, by the way, if you enjoyed that, that's off of the soundtrack for 1492. That was actually, I think it came out in 1992. So look that up if you enjoyed that piece. That's one of my favorites. So Russ, thanks for playing that. I love that. So I want to talk with you this morning and have a conversation about a particular word. I think the two most important words in life and our success are attitude and commitment. And today I want to talk with you about the word commitment. There are a lot of quotes that I enjoy reading and that I've committed to memory or that I have saved and I've written down on my journal or on my 3x5 cards. But I was looking up quotes on commitment this morning, and I found a new one, and I just want to read this to you. So just take a moment and just listen. Stop all the distractions if you have any where you are, and put your pen down. I want you to take some notes this morning, but I just want you to listen to this quote for a second because it'll take a second to digest it. I'm going to repeat it a couple of times, but let me read this because I do not have this one committed to memory. But this is the quote. It reads, "Commitment means that it is possible for a person to yield the nerve center of their consent to a purpose or cause, a movement or an ideal which may be more important to them than whether they live or die." I'm going to repeat that to you again, but I'm going to interpret it just a little bit because a lot was said there, and it may have been said in a little awkward way, but I'm going to try to put some plain language to it. Commitment means that it is possible for a person to yield the nerve center of their consent. In other words, basically this, to just simply yield their mind, to a purpose or a cause, to something, an ideal or some movement, which is more important to them than their actual survival or death. It is more important to them than their own survival. It becomes that important to them. That's a very powerful statement. And I'm not here to say that you have to be that committed to real estate, but I know this, that there are things in your life that you are so committed to that you would in fact yield the nerve center of your consent, in other words, your mind, to achieve that thing, to protect that thing, to uphold that thing. You think about if you're a father, you think about what you would do to protect your own children or your spouse. Look, there are things that we are so committed to, and that's what that statement is capturing. The truth is that we are so committed to certain things that we will, in fact, die for those things. So I just want you to, I'm going to share a couple of fun stories with you this morning, but as I share these stories with you, I just want you to think about what it is you're committed to. And at the end of our conversation, I'm going to pose a question to you that I think is a very cool question that will shed some light on your commitment, specifically yours. Each person who's listening to this message. But this is one of my favorite stories to tell. It's about a group of women who have this social club, and the social club is built around them getting up every morning and running together. And they've been doing this for years. And there's this core of women who get together consistently, and then kind of on the periphery, some will come and go, but there's this core that always comes. But this one particular morning, they had the core people, but they had a couple of new people who came on the morning jog. And as they were out running, they got to know the new gals, and the new gals got to know the core, the group that typically runs. And with the group one morning was Maggie, and Maggie was a consistent runner. She was somebody who went along with the group consistently almost every morning. She was part of that core, the committed group. And they were out doing their thing, running. And that morning, Maggie decided to bring her daughter with her. And her daughter had never been with her mom on this group run with this social club. Now, something you need to understand about Maggie is this. Maggie is a lady who very independent, but she's challenged with cerebral palsy. And it's a pretty extreme case of cerebral palsy. It affects the way in which she walks and the way in which she talks and communicates. It's very severe, so much so that when Maggie runs, she has to wear a helmet and elbow pads and knee pads because she will oftentimes fall when she's running. And she's been running with these women for years. Well, this particular morning, Maggie was running with her daughter and all the other women, and they would go on, 1, 2, 3 mile, either a walk or a jog or a run, depending upon the length of it. And the women always try to be mindful of Maggie because she was not necessarily going to run as quickly, but she was committed to running every morning. Well, on this particular morning with Maggie's daughter there, the women were chatting with Maggie's daughter, and they kind of got distracted. And as they got into the run about a quarter of a mile, they realized that Maggie was no longer with them. And so they stopped and looked back, could not see Maggie, but they had come across a bend in the trail. And so they just stood and waited for a few moments to see if Maggie was going to come around the corner. And in fact, Maggie did. As she came around the corner, she continued to run as Maggie would do, struggling, and looking certainly different in the way in which she runs from the other people, but nevertheless running. And as Maggie, you could tell she was struggling, as she oftentimes does. And you could tell that at some point she had fallen because the pads that she was wearing were dusty and scuffed up. And at that moment, as Maggie got close to the group, one of the newer women to the group said to Maggie, you don't need to do this. It's okay. And Maggie looked at her like, what are you talking about? That I don't need to do this? And the woman looked at her again and said, we understand that you have this challenge, and, you don't have to run, and, we'll wait for you. Because she could see how Maggie was running and just working her hardest to get to them as quickly as possible. And Maggie looked at this woman who said that with determination, with kindness, but with determination, and said, let me tell you something. I don't do this for you. She looked at this woman and said, I don't do this for you. I don't do this to impress you. This is not about you. She said, I do this for me, and this morning I do this for my daughter. See, Maggie was committed to running and to staying up with the group, even though she was challenged to do that, and to maintain a pace as fast as she could, even though it was challenging, it was difficult for her, even though she may have looked a bit different or awkward as she was running, she did as quickly as she could because she wanted to demonstrate to herself and to her daughter what her commitment was, that despite her challenges, despite how she may be different, that she was going to do it. See, here's the thing, guys and gals. People will make excuses for you. People will allow you to make excuses for yourself. I want you to think about that. I'm going to say that again. People will make excuses for you, and people will allow you to make excuses for yourself. It's very typical. See, the question that I have for you is, are you committed to surviving, just getting by? Or are you committed to thriving, to being extraordinary, to doing things that people don't expect or that they would excuse you from? Say, oh, it's okay. You have this circumstance or this challenge, and because of that, you don't need to do it. Right? And we do this to ourselves. We negotiate it away. We say, because of this circumstance or that circumstance or this happening, whatever it is, we negotiate away what should be our absolute non-negotiable commitments. In other words, going back to yielding to that thing that in our mind, to that movement or that ideal, that purpose or that cause that we would literally die for, whatever it is. Let me say this again. People will encourage you to make excuses, and we will buy off on that. See, here's what I know. Commitment is not easy. It's not easy. That's why it's so easy to make excuses for it and not do the thing that we should do in order to achieve the life that we want. See, commitment is not easy. That is true. But what are you committed to? Are you committed to surviving? Or are you committed to thriving? See, Maggie wasn't just committed to surviving. See, surviving for Maggie would be not going out on the run, acceding to this idea that she has cerebral palsy, and people with cerebral palsy don't run. this reminds me of those of you in Utah, of course, know John Aubrey. John's one of my favorite people, not just because, like Maggie, John is committed to cerebral palsy, but John is just, he's a smart guy. He's interesting. He's very, very intelligent, and loves history. Just an all-around really good guy, a kind guy, great integrity. But one of the things that I admire most about John is his determination. I have watched John play basketball with a bunch of able-bodied men who aren't challenged with cerebral palsy, and John go out there and play head-to-head with those guys, toe-to-toe, and fall many times as a result, like, and everybody does. I mean, I've fallen and broken my arm during a game, but to watch John to play and to commit to play and to be as if he did not have this challenge, because he wasn't focused on the challenge. He was focused on his commitment to just simply go out there and enjoy a game of basketball and to do what John does, which is to compete. He is a very competitive person, those of you who know him. It is interesting to look at the way people can deal with the same set of circumstances so differently that the response is completely different, one person to the next. That reminds me of back in, let's see, my daughter now, Gabrielle, will be 20 in August. She was 13. So it's coming up on 7 years ago. 7 years ago, I took my daughter to New York, and one of the things that we decided to do was to get to Grand Central Station, get on the train, and go up to Connecticut. And we were going to tour the campus of Yale, which we did. But we also spent some time with some friends, some people who used to live next door to us. And they had a couple of boys about my daughter's age. And it happened to be on that particular day that their oldest son was on the cross-country team. And they were having a meet, a cross-country meet. And they were having it at this beautiful park that was oceanside, great views. And where we were situated, we had the opportunity to not only see the race start, but also to see it finish. So we had the most ideal perch or spot for this particular 3-mile cross-country race. And what was so interesting, and the reason I'm sharing this story with you, is the way in which these young kids, you know, these 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, the way that they ran these races that they were in. I watched some of the kids, a few of them, that in the beginning, they would push so hard that they would separate themselves from the group within just the first 30 to 60 seconds, that there was this extreme distance between them and the rest of the group. And that as you watched the group continue over the next couple of minutes, how the group started to separate and break off into smaller groups. And then at one point, we could no longer see them because they would go down and around hills and behind trees and so forth. And so most of the race we didn't get to see from where we were. But I believe that we got to see the most important part, the start of the race and the finish of the race. And the most interesting part to me wasn't even the start and to watch how some of the kids started. What was most interesting to me was the way in which the kids were finishing. I watched as some of those kids would come around the corner where you could finally see them again after a long time, to watch these kids who were obviously challenged. I mean, they were winded physically, they were exhausted, and they were trying to keep pace, whatever that pace was for them. And to watch some of these kids come around the corner, and I remember this one coming around the corner and literally hopping on one leg. Now, from the distance, I couldn't tell exactly what was going on, but I eventually found out as the kid got closer and I could hear the conversation, and whether it was his coach or his dad or who was standing there next to him, encouraging him, that the kid had suffered from cramping and he was dehydrated. And he had a severe cramp in his right or left leg. I don't remember which, but he was using the other leg to hop. And literally this young man hopped for the last 100 yards or so of this race across the finish line. Then I would watch some of the kids as they came around the corner and they could finally see the finish line. Some of these kids, as they saw the finish line, would pick up the pace. You could see visibly that they would run faster. And then I watched as some of the kids would come around that corner, and then as they saw the finish line, they would start to slow down. Literally their pace, you could see measurably, they would start to slow down to the point where some of them, where they were jogging, that they began to walk. It was so interesting. And then I remember this one gal, probably my favorite part of the entire race. I watched this one gal who, as she came around the corner, she jogged. But as she got closer to the finish line, she started to slow down. Then about 40, maybe 50 feet away from the finish line, this young lady literally collapsed on the ground. She fell down forward to all fours, and then literally her hands collapsed underneath her, and she was face down on the grass. And she was visibly upset. She was crying, and you could tell that she was in a lot of pain. And I don't know if it was because it was she had pulled something or if she was dehydrated, but I know that she was suffering from some pretty significant challenges. And everybody rushed, her coach and classmates, teammates, and friends and family rushed around her. And what was so interesting is to watch what this young lady did. I could hear her telling people, don't stop. And she struggled to get back up on all fours. And then she asked somebody close to her to help her up, and they did. And she was standing up again on her own 2 feet. And she took one step forward, and then another step forward, and then another one, and then she collapsed again. And I won't give you the detail, but when somebody gets dehydrated, they will start to, of course, heave, and then if you have food in you, you know what happens. Well, this young lady started to do that. But what was interesting to me and so compelling, that despite her challenges and what she was doing in dealing with the dehydration, she's on all fours, and I watched this young lady for the last 30 feet or so climb her way, crawl her way on all four to the finish line, and literally cross the finish line, guys and gals, crawling. And as she got over the finish line, she collapsed, and people grabbed her, got her up and away from the finish line, and then attended to her, worked to get her hydrated and to massage her muscles and to get rid of the cramps. Now look, it is remarkable how people will respond to the same set of circumstances. To watch all of those kids run the same race, but to have different challenges and different reactions to the way in which they finished it. Some not finishing at all, some finishing strong, some finishing starting strong, and then some finishing strong, and then some not finishing at all, and then watch some who would struggle, literally on all fours, throwing up, and they still finished, albeit crawling across the finish line. Now look, I've got a question for you. I want to know what you are committed to. What exactly are you committed to? See, I believe that your commitments, my commitments, are expressed by what we do. See, your commitments are expressed by what you do. I want you to think about this for a second. Think about your relationships. Think about the most important relationship that you're in. I want you to think about your health, your mental, your physical, your emotional health. I want you to think about your real estate business. I want you to ask yourself this question: what am I committed to in each of those areas? One of the best ways to determine what you're committed to is to think about that particular area in your life, whether it's the relationships or it's your health or it's your business, is to examine what you've been doing. I want you to think about last week, for example, when it comes to real estate. Really truthfully, have a conversation with yourself and ask yourself, what did I do last week? What were the activities that I engaged in consistently? Did I get up on time? Did I exercise? Did I eat consistently? What kind of food did I eat? Did I practice my skill set of communicating with other human beings? Did I call people consistently? Not only my sphere of influence, but did I try to establish new relationships? Did I try to take leads that I have and convert those into clients? Did I spend time with those who are most important to me? What did I do in my personal life relative to my own personal growth to improve myself so that as I come to the table in my relationships, with my health, mental, physical, and emotional, and in my business, that I bring a better version of myself? See, what did you do last week? What did you do when the coronavirus started to take hold and the stay-at-home mandates came out? How did you respond? Take a look at what you did last year. What did your level of activity look like in those three areas, in your relationships, with your health, with your business? What were you committed to? Again, I say this, that our commitments are expressed by what we do. So look at the way in which you are behaving to understand what you're committed to. See, some people will say that they're committed to very specific things, but then you examine their life and you realize not so much. That's not what they're really committed to. See, most people will say that they want all of these great things. They want to be in a great, loving, caring, committed relationship. They say that they want to be healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally, right? They want to lower their cholesterol, lower their body mass index. They want to be physically stronger. They want to look better physically, right? They'll say that they want to earn more money in real estate. They want to close more transactions. They want to pay off their house. They want to have savings. They want to have investment properties. They want to have a savings account or college fund for their kids. And yet you examine what they do every day, not so much. They're not really committed to those things. They say they are, but their actions express a different commitment. So I'm going to challenge you to consider this. How are you expressing yourself every day? What are you committed to? Examine your commitments by examining the way in which you're expressing yourself every single day in those three areas. Look, the ordinary person just simply works to survive, ladies and gentlemen. They allow fear to control. They avoid the very things that they know that they should do to live the life that they want, but they are more committed to safety, security, not failing, just getting by, not getting out of their comfort zone, than they are to their own dreams, to the things that they will tell you, bold-faced in front of you, these are the things that I want in my life. And they will do exactly the opposite. See, if you want to be extraordinary, you have to make certain you're not controlled by your fears, but rather you, going back to this quote, we're going to finish on this. Commitment means that it is possible for a person to yield the nerve center of their consent. In other words, to yield their mind to a purpose or cause or a movement or an ideal, which may be more important to them than whether they live or die. See, how cool would it be to find things in your business and in your health, mental, physical, and emotional, that you could be just as committed to for those of us who have children or grandchildren or your spouse, so committed to those people that you literally would take a bullet for them. You would do whatever you could to save them in moments of absolute life or death decisions. That how cool would it be to take that level of commitment, even half of it, even a quarter of that sort of commitment, that you would die for it, that you would take that level of commitment and apply it to your health, your mental, physical, emotional health, and your business. And truly becoming the person that you're capable of becoming, not only in real estate, but in life. So I just want you to remember these stories of the Maggies and these young men and women in that cross-country meet, that look, that we all have challenges. that people will make excuses for us, and we will buy off on those excuses, or we'll make our own excuses and excuse ourselves from the very things that we say that we want. Or we have the opportunity to commit, to yield to those things. Look, guys and gals, the greatest repository of potential, of dreams, of success is graveyards. More potential, more dreams, more success, never realized, is taken to the grave. Because most people excuse themselves from doing the very things, the monotonous, tedious, difficult things that it will take to live their life. But what I don't want for you, and what I certainly don't want for myself, is that we get to the end of our days and we're in that moment and we look back and we say to ourselves, I never truly was committed. I never really did what it would have taken to live the life that I wanted. Look, it is programmed in each and every one of us to be successful. We have it within us. But until we find ourselves committed, we're never going to realize those things. So please, man, take the time to examine what it is that you're doing every single day and ask yourself this question. Is what I am doing every single day in alignment with the things that I say that I want? And if it's not, and you're performing below where you should be, then you have got to figure out how you're going to be more committed to the things that you say that you want. Maybe it is that you don't have the right commitments. Maybe it is that you say that you want those things, but you're not justifying those things in a way in which it makes sense for you to fight for those things. I remember one time I said I was committed to losing weight. In fact, many times I said I was committed to losing weight. This was years ago when I weighed over 60 pounds more than I do today. And I would try it and I would lose some weight and I would go back to my old behavior, my old patterns, my own habits, and gain back the weight and even more. And it wasn't until I realized that it wasn't about the weight. I wasn't really trying to lose weight. I was trying to change my life so that I could perceive myself differently and others would perceive me differently, so that I could be in a relationship and start a family and live a life that I have envisioned for myself. Look, guys and gals, figure out what it is that you're willing to fight for. Fight for. Because nothing else is worthwhile. Figure out what you're willing to fight for. Become committed. Yield to the nerve center of your consent to that ideal or that purpose or that cause. And go out there and live the life that you say that you want. So at the end of your days, you can say, I left nothing on the battlefield. I gave it all. I reserved nothing. When I finished, I gave everything that I gave. And even if you don't achieve everything that you wanted, at least you gave it your all. But don't put yourself in a position where you live that life of regret saying, man, I wish I would have, and now the opportunities are gone. So great job on being here. I hope that you have a great day today. I hope this message has been inspirational for you and motivational. But man, take the time to figure this out and have this conversation with yourself. And this is a conversation you have to have with yourself consistently. This isn't something you do just once. This is like taking a bath. Do it every day because you start to stink. Look, your mind starts to stink and you start to make excuses and you start to behave in ways that are inconsistent with the things that you say that you want. Don't do that. Be that person who finds the commitment, stays committed, and lives the life that they're capable of living. So let's finish it up with some closing affirmations. Here we go.